You may have been paying attention to the recent news. Of course, Mega Upload, which is a popular site for file storage and then taking those files, extracting them, basically sharing any sort of material across the internet through Mega Upload. Mega Upload has been taken down by the FBI for reasons you can look at as either legitimate or illegitimate, depends on your particular perspective on that. And YouTube is changing its format on March 1st to be something along the lines of, you can compare the old YouTube, the one we're currently using, most users are using the old style, to the new style. You can sort of compare it to West and East Germany during the period of the Berlin Wall. Facebook has come out with a hideous new timeline feature that eventually, let's face it, they'll probably make mandatory, because all of these large sites do this. You've got SOPA and PIPA perhaps creeping through the Congress and stifling free speech and crushing startup companies and giving more power to Hollywood and the entertainment and media industries. You look at all of the things that seem to be happening lately, and they're all big news. Sites are being taken down, the government's trying to infringe upon free speech, they're trying to censor everything on the internet, they're trying to crack down any way they can. The media is, Hollywood is, the music organizations are, the government, various groups just basically trying to crush what makes the internet the internet. And if you really look at it one perspective, you can say that if all of these things go through as planned and they continue, we're going to enter basically what amounts to a dark age on the internet, from which we may never recover. If you look at television, and I'm just going to take this as it is, look at television, get the best premium package that you can get with, you know, the 1,000 channels or whatever, and, you know, all the extras and all this bullshit. The top of the line, top quality cable package. And try entertaining yourself with television. You may find 2 or 3 series that you actually like, and the rest of it is just a bunch of gunk. I think everybody here has sat down in front of the television and wasted hours surfing the channels because some things are a little bit interesting but nothing you'd really want to spend your time watching. That's basically what the internet is going to turn into if all of these things continue. Because what happened with television is that now it's all controlled by, number one, corporations. They control the media. Let's not mince words here. The media is completely controlled by corporations and or lobbying groups that want you to hear certain news with a certain spin to it, according to whether you happen to be liberal or conservative or whatever you happen to be. And it's all slanted with an edge so that you're getting a whitewashed version of the news. There's no actual news on the television anymore. It just doesn't exist. So that's one problem. The other problem is that, of course, Hollywood controls most of what's on TV, and unfortunately Hollywood seems to have a fetish for reality TV, a fetish for taking down all the series that entertain people and putting up series that just sort of occupy their time. I'm not sure exactly what the purpose is, but they do it anyway. Television now is what the internet will look like in a decade if we don't fight to change the way in which the internet is being affected by new legislation. All the corporate takeovers on the internet. You look at the internet now as compared to, 3 or 4 years ago, a hell of a lot more ads, a hell of a lot more monetization. This isn't just on YouTube, this is across the entire internet. And although I'll give credit to Google for standing against SOPA, in a way you have to take that credit away, because what they're doing with YouTube, with the new channels, with the new home pages, with all the changes that they're making to YouTube, the new algorithms, they're just basically, it seems, trying to enforce the, 1 million top users and give them all the kudos, and all the non-profits and all the individuals that are making interesting videos, they're sort of pushed to the side. to the point where a person that gets 10,000 hits a day means nothing to YouTube. And Facebook is the same way. I mean, with this new friggin' timeline, they're going to go the way of MySpace, if you really want to think about it. We're entering a dark age on the internet. We're entering the point at which the unfortunate, inevitable happenings, which we all sort of knew were coming but sort of hoped wouldn't come, it's sort of a little bit like Armageddon, people, because unless we stand against it, it's going to happen, and there's really not much we can do about it even if we do stand against it. We can stand against these changes and rail against them and organize little events and blackouts and have blogs dedicated to, you know, Stop SOPA or whatever. But when it really comes down to it, eventually such things are going to get sneaked through little by little. They might not do it all at once. We can slow it down, but it's still going to get through, and eventually the internet community will be completely corporate owned. There will be virtually no freedom on it whatsoever, because here's the trade-off. We're stopping the government, SOPA and PIPA and stuff like that, we're trying to stop the government from censoring the internet and from fucking it over. And at the same time, some of the companies that are supporting our efforts against SOPA and PIPA do the same thing, such as Google, you know, through YouTube or whatever. And it's all just a ploy to make money, and they're going to continue to do that until they maximize their revenue. So what the internet's eventually going to look like is ads everywhere, intensive censorship of people's words that don't necessarily jive with the mainstream, because, oh my god, if they're not appealing to mainstream, well then they're not going to make us as much money, so we might as well kick them off the internet. It's just a bunch of bullshit. And it's gotten to the point where the internet, which was once a very wild and hairy place, sort of a little bit like the Old West almost, is sort of looking like things at around the 1920s when the Old West started to die out and started to get law, and people started dying because, you know, you couldn't do this anymore and you couldn't do that anymore. And there were always a few outlaws left, and there were always a few pioneers to go off into the mountains or whatever. But for the most part, it's already been populated, and it's now slowing down. It's really kind of sad to see that lifestyle go, because you got to understand something. People always have a pioneer spirit in them. Everyone has it. Everyone wants to, you know, go explore something no one's ever explored before. They may over time be like, well, actually, I just kind of want to stay home. But deep inside them, they have that drive and motivation because humans are curious by nature. The problem is, for our generation, you've got to understand something. The entire world has already been explored. We've already gone to the moon. We've already orbited the Earth. Everything that's within our reach, potentially, we've already done. There is no longer any physical location we can go to that's not populated and already has a McDonald's. They don't exist anymore. I mean, you can go over to Mongolia and, you know, ride a yak, or you can climb Mount Everest like a million other people have done, and you might get a little bit of a thrill out of it, but people have already done those things. The internet was the last refuge for the pioneer spirit, at least until something else comes along and eclipses even the internet, which, let's face it, it will eventually happen. Something will be invented that's even more potent than the internet. It's going to happen. Probably within our lifetimes, probably within the next 20 or 30 years. I'll be too old to really enjoy it by then and won't understand how to use it, and I'll be a little bit like old people on the internet today. So it doesn't really help me, but maybe it'll help our children and grandchildren a little. But the internet was the last pioneer refuge. If you suddenly start censoring and controlling and beating the shit out of anyone who does put themselves out on the internet and give it more and more rules and more corporate sponsors and make more and more money off of it, it cheapens the ability of the internet to be an exciting place to be. And that's very unfortunate, because for a very long time we're probably not going to have anything better than the internet to occupy our time when we want that little thrill. When I first started using the internet back in the mid-90s, it was still a relatively new concept to a lot of people. You've got to understand, the internet until about 1995 was not widely accessed by certainly not by the large proportion that it is now of the population, especially in the Western world. Its graphics tended to be shitty. There wasn't, there weren't all these chat rooms. There were a few text-only chat rooms, that's about it. There were not so many forums. Blogs barely existed, I can't even remember. I don't even think there were blogs back then. YouTube didn't exist. There was no Facebook or MySpace. There was no social networking whatsoever. These things did not exist. Originally, the internet was people built a page, added some keywords, put some content on there, and left it alone. You didn't have all of the modern things that you have on the internet now. And it was an exciting place to be, and it could be a dangerous place to be too because of viruses and things so forth. When the internet started getting really, really good, when things like YouTube started being developed, you have to realize just how exciting that was. There are probably people that'll watch this video that are just too young to remember when they were old enough to actually use the internet, and yet there was no social networking. I think that's something strictly for people in our 20s right now. We remember it before Facebook. We remember it before YouTube. It was exciting. And it got even more exciting when Facebook and YouTube and all these sites got developed, because they were so streamlined and they were so capable and they were so entertaining. It was like nothing that had ever been experienced before. And the optimistic view was, well, more sites like this are going to happen, and they'll continue on just as they are now, and there'll be free speech for all, and everyone can put themselves out there. That doesn't look like it's going to be the case. It looks like the pessimists are going to win out, and lo and behold, corporations are going to take everything over. Google's already taken over YouTube. They're taking over more sites now. They're now integrating, there's a popular web service called Picnic it's basically like a cheap Photoshop based on the web, and it's being closed down and integrated with Google+. So only Google+ users will be able to use it. That's really the sum and substance of the modern internet. We're entering a dark age of the internet at this point. It's very, very unfortunate to see that these sites, which were originally built by groups of people, sites like YouTube and Facebook rely on their user base to actually exist. They were a collective, but now they've moved to a dictatorial model in which they no longer recognize the rights of the users and or the fact that their users are really the purpose for their site existing. They've gone from user-based to money-based. And they're letting the corporations win. Just like when YouTube started allowing people to promote videos, and now the Church of the Mormons has spent $1 million or whatever they've spent promoting their videos, so now every other video at the top of the list is from the Church of the Mormons. Or by some corporation. After the BP oil spill, when you looked up BP oil, you didn't get the results from the environmentalist groups. You got a bunch of sponsored links from BP that they invested probably tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in to explain just how wonderful their company was and just all the wonderful things they were doing to help the Gulf. It's the same shit as with TV. It's becoming less and less free. It's becoming less and less accurate. I mean, sites like Wikipedia, the people at Wikipedia might as well just shut down their friggin' site and just say fuck everybody and pocket what money they've managed to make, which isn't very much since they're not for profit, and just disappear. They might as well just do that. YouTube might as well not exist at this point, because when they move ahead with the new designs, it won't be YouTube anymore. It won't be customizable. It won't be interactive. It won't be graphically advanced. It'll just be, oh, I posted a fucking video. Everybody look at how special I am. It's the graying of the internet, and it's just absolutely terrifying to think about how much less people will be able to organize, how many fewer people will organize in resistance to bad laws, in resistance to bad corporations, in resistance to bad ideas on the internet, simply because the internet's less interactive. It's going to be very, very terrible for this world. The internet was the greatest bastion of free speech and free expression we ever had, and now it looks like it's going to go the way of TV, and it's all going to get